we got some NFL high or low to get to with our DraftKings contributor, Pearce Detrich, and Rotowire's AJ Scholz. So are the following individual player props too high or too low, guys? We expect a shootout in the Cardinals-Rams matchup on Sunday, first place in the division on the line. They're both 3-0. Matt Stafford is off to an amazing start. His passing total for this game is set at a pretty lofty 295.5. That too high or too low against this Arizona secondary, Pearce?
That's a pretty high number, but dare I say it's too low. Stafford's getting, for the first time in his career, great offensive line play. He's got tons of weapons to pass to. The rush attack's not really that great for the Rams. So why not just keep passing? Arizona's got Robert Alford in their secondary, a guy that was out of the league. He is now a starting cornerback. He's played pretty well, and the Cardinals have played pretty well in the secondary, but they haven't played anybody. In their one tough matchup against the Vikings, they allowed 33 points. Stafford should be able to easily move the ball against this defense.
All right, AJ, how about you, dude?
I'm with Pearce on this one. Look, I think it is too low. Excuse me. You consider the fact the Cards have faced Tannehill, Cousins, and Trevor Lawrence through the first 3 games. They haven't faced a big arm like Matthew Stafford. I don't see any reason to think he can't hit another 300-yard game here.
Guys, no Christian McCaffrey for the Panthers. So the Dallas defense is going to be facing Chuba Hubbard, however you say his name, in the backfield. His rushing total is set at 53.5. So is that too high in terms of expectations? We're talking about a rookie here, AJ.
Well, I think it's still too low. I mean, the Panthers have the 6th most rush attempts in the league this season with 93. And I don't see them significantly dropping off, that pace of about 30 rushes a game. Even if you figured, Hubbard gets, 20 touches conservatively, that's less than 3 yards a carry to reach 53.5. You combine with the fact that the Cowboys are giving up 4.7 yards per carry, and I definitely think it's too low.
Pearce, how about you?
I'm on the opposite side. I think this is too high. Carolina, before the season, we knew that their offensive line the last couple of years has struggled, and it's pretty much bearing out. If you look at the advanced metrics, the line's not playing that well. Christian McCaffrey is just averaging 3.9 yards per carry. That's 34th in the NFL. If Christian McCaffrey is only getting the 34th best yards per carry, I don't know what Hubbard's going to be able to do. I think the best point of reference is just look at last season. What did Mike Davis do when Christian McCaffrey was out? And 6 times he went over this number. 6 times he did not go over this number. It's going to be a lot closer than it really should be with a low number like this, but I still think it's going to go low.
And Pearce, Carolina has hit the trail for a single second this season. You believe that's going to change this week?
Yeah, man, I think Dallas's defense is playing a lot better. We need to start giving them some credit for what they have done. And then, Dallas's offense, as we already know, they look pretty. I mean, people were talking about how Pollard was better than Ezekiel Elliott. I don't know about that anymore. Ezekiel Elliott looked pretty good last week.
All right, AJ, next up, let's look at the Browns here. Let's look at the Vikings matchup. We've talked a lot this week about Kirk Cousins and that Vikings offense, which is off to a ridiculous start. But let's focus on one of the receivers here. So Justin Jefferson has a receiving yards total of 80.5 set for this game. Do you think that's too high or too low?
I actually think this one's too low as well. Look, the Browns have been one of the best teams so far this season versus the past by allowing just 632 receiving yards. But they've given up some big plays. They're averaging 12.4 yards per reception. And I think that suits Jefferson's strengths really well. He's got 3 catches this year, over 20-plus yards, and I think it could be another big yardage game for him. So I think it's too low.
Pearce, how about you? Which side do you fall on?
It's too high for me. It's just a really big number. And he's capable of doing it. Obviously, he went over it the other week. But there's too many targets on this team with Thielen, Conklin, Osborne. And then you also have to factor in, which we've talked about all week, what if Kirk Cousins suddenly remembers he's Kirk Cousins? And if he does, then you're not going to have this great game. Plus, I with this big of a number, I am slightly concerned with the matchup against Denzel Ward for the Browns. I don't want to target a top-tier cornerback with this high of a number.
And then Pearce, a little nervous, too, with that Browns defense getting up in Kirk Cousins' face. 9 sacks last week, man.
Well, I'm not really worried because we were talking about earlier this week, stats-wise, Kirk Cousins has been getting the ball out of the pocket really well. He's been dealing with pressure really well. You got to give him credit. He is doing what he's supposed to do. I just still haven't, come to terms with, is this the new Kirk Cousins?
Yeah. You know who hasn't come to terms with that is Jeff Ulrich, but Reed T. Fowler certainly has. There is beef between those two dudes right now. It is entertaining on Twitter. AJ, let's talk here a little bit about TJ Hawkinson and the Lions. They're going to be looking for their first win. We're talking against a division rival, Chicago. Okay. Hawkinson averaging 6 catches a game. He's being targeted left and right, although week 3 was a little more quiet. Is his week 4 receptions total of 4.5 too low?
I actually think it's probably too high. And you alluded to it here, Emerson, is the fact that his targets have dropped every single week. It was a high in week 1 of 11, and he had just 2 targets last week in week 3 here. Khalif Raymond taking up a big share of those opportunities. Look, if his targets end up, I would expect a little bit higher than 2, but if he only gets like 4 or 5 targets, he's got to catch them all here. So I think that number's too high. I think he's kind of, they're spreading it out, seeing a little more production from a couple other guys, and I just don't see him being targeted enough to reach that threshold.
Okay, how about you, Pearce?
Looks like AJ and I are going to disagree on everything this week.
It's awesome.
I'd say it's too low, and I understand the concern. Detroit last week ran the ball more than they have all season, and they had success. They nearly won the game. So if I am the coach of the Detroit Lions, I'm going to keep running the ball. But Hawkinson is one of their best weapons. They need to use him. Chicago has the 3rd best adjusted sack rate, so there's going to be pressure on Goff. If Goff is under pressure, I would look to my best weapon, which is Hawkinson, and target him like he did in week 1 and in week 2. I know Chicago's been good against tight ends this season, but it's a small sample size, and they haven't really faced some tough opponents. If you look back to last year, they were 2nd worst when it comes to allowing fantasy points to tight ends, so they were definitely someone you could target before. I think they will be again. Hawkins. Here's another thing. If you look up Hawkinson, and this has nothing to do with anything, but look at his picture online. Doesn't he look like the Cowardly Lion? Anyone want to check that out sometime? Cowardly Lion photo.
Yeah, so you're digging his long hair?
I don't know if I'm going to say I'm digging his long hair.
You used to have hair like that. That was your old haircut like 3 weeks ago. You change your haircut every month.
Yeah, well, I just need to get it cut more often. I don't know what to tell you. Look, don't get fashion advice from me. I'm the last person anyone wants to talk to.
What was the cowardly? He needed a heart, right? It seems like Hawkinson has a heart out there, at least for fantasy. Yeah, courage. That's what it was. I'm sorry. What was the heart? The Tin Man?
Tin Man needed the heart. He needed courage.
Okay, so what did the Scarecrow need?
A brain.
A brain. There you go. It's been a while. It's one of my favorite movies, though. Let's end the segment here with this week's most talked about game. So the Sunday night showdown between the Bucs and the Patriots. Oh man, this is juicy. This is meaty. All the focus has been on Tom Brady's return. Yes, but earlier in the week, Pearce, you said Tampa has to get the running game going. So with that in mind, is a rushing total of 41.5 too high or too low for Uncle Leo, Leonard Fournette?
It's too low. They should run the ball. Not that Bruce Arians listens to me. Not that he really should listen to me. But, what I'm saying is exactly what he did last season. Tampa ran the ball. They were very conservative, balanced on offense all season long. They didn't throttle up until the end, and that worked. And that's probably what they should do again if they want to win. Run the ball with Fournette. Him and Rojo proves that they can carry the load, and they can handle it and get this team. I'm a Keyshawn Vaughn guy. So I think Bon Jovi should get in and get some action as well. But you run the ball, you play conservative, you take it easy on your defense too, because that defense just got a lot older this week. So you don't want those guys on the field too much. It should go over, but you know what? It could just be the Tom Brady revenge narrative, whatever.
All right, how about you? Let's hear it, AJ.
Well, I agree with Pearce that it should be too low, but it's not. Unfortunately, it's too high. And you look at a couple of numbers here for Fournette. Look, start with snap totals. He was on the field for just 36.6% of the Bucs offensive snaps. That actually trailed Giovanni Bernard. Though Bernard factored exclusively in the passing game, he didn't get a single carry. If they go pass heavy again, it looks like Gio's their guy. And then you also factor in, Ronald Jones had more carries in week 3 just by 1, but still, he had more carries in week 3 than Fournette. And so I think this is too high of a mark for him.